right. Let's talk a little bit more about what's at stake, what's at play right now. We've got so much happening just weeks before the actual vote comes up, as I've been talking about. And joining me now, Joe Slakas, who's a public affairs consultant, also a very passionate Democrat. So you're there on that side of the aisle, and it's great to see you as always.
Well, on the Gingrich and Iowa Caucus, I think I would not underestimate the evangelicals. I would not underestimate Newt's influence with them. Newt has been spending a lot of time in Iowa going to church. And he's going to church and he's talking about his experience. He was born a Lutheran, became a Southern Baptist in college, married now to a Catholic for 10 years, became a Catholic in 2009, after in 2008 meeting the Pope and attending one of the papal events in the United States. And he's been going to church in Iowa talking about his religious life and how important God is to America. And so I wouldn't underestimate getting those folks. And also the other factor in Iowa is January 3rd, weather. And it's church people who will call up other church people and say, Mary, I know you're going to have a tough time getting over to the caucus. We're going to come pick you up and take you. Right. And from my experience as, on the ground and doing, field work in campaigns, that's a very important factor when you're only looking at 170,000 people.
Absolutely. And joining us from Washington, we've got Ford O'Connell, who's the chairman of Civic Forum PAC and the co-founder of Project Virginia. He is joining us from our D.C. bureau. Ford, I know that you're really excited about what's coming up, and I know that you're gearing up for the debate. And to that point that Joe brings up, it's very true that Iowa voters are very serious about taking part in these caucuses. And as you point out, the weather is very critical on a day like that. But as you see what's going on right now, do you think Gingrich has the organization in place to really make this work for him?
No, I don't think he has the organization in place in Iowa, and I don't think he has it in other states, but he's definitely improving along those lines. I think, to what Joe's saying, a big key for a lot of evangelicals in Iowa is whether or not they see Newt Gingrich as a changed man. If they do, he may very well win this caucus, like the polls are saying right now.
Because that is something that people are wondering how sincere he really is, whether or not he is a changed man. He's been asked that question over and over again about his past indiscretions and things like that. But he says, he's reformed. He's been able to have his own personal conversation with God, and he's moving forward with that. He feels comfortable with that. It's interesting to note that, because in socially conservative voters are maybe a little bit more forgiving this time around and will focus on bigger issues like the economy.
Well, especially if you look at what he's saying when he goes into those churches. He's talking about, I go to the cathedral in Washington where my wife sings in the choir and I sit in the pew, and it's the best part of my week, and it prepares me for the week. I mean, he's really he's doing his best to be, I think, sincere about that. I don't know. I haven't been in that audience, but this is the report of what he's doing when he goes into those churches. And
Joe, to your point, I do think he is throwing out, if we will, the right coded language towards evangelicals. Mm-hmm. But right now, with a relatively large field, there's a lot of folks vying for those evangelical voters, including Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann, and even Ron Paul to some extent.
At this point, we are watching and waiting to see just how down and dirty the politics are going to get in terms of how those candidates are going to be reacting to each other and going after Newt Gingrich, because they have been treading very carefully. Newt Gingrich has been pledging not to go negative. Mitt Romney has to look as though he's becoming more aggressive. There has been a little bit of that over the last 24 hours. But do you think that it's going to work, this on Newt Gingrich going negative? Do you think this is something that ultimately that's what sticks in voters' minds? Ford?
It's one of these things that I think Mitt Romney wants to get Newt Gingrich's dirty laundry out there as much as possible. But I don't think that Mitt Romney really realizes that a lot of folks, particularly older folks, remember Newt Gingrich from 1994, and they know his dirty laundry. The question is whether or not they're willing to support him. And right now, he seems to have the enthusiasm and the momentum, because if we look very clearly at the polls, we see two things that Republican primary voters are looking for. One is a fighter who generates enthusiasm, and the second is a strong conservative leader. If we go back to 1994, and I'm staying neutral here, the one thing that a lot of older primary folks are going to think back in their minds is saying, hey, Newt Gingrich was doing contract with America while Mitt Romney was running against Teddy Kennedy, and frankly, he was running as a moderate liberal who was supporting, pro-choice and to some extent, same-sex marriage. So this is something that a lot of people have to square in their mind, and it's really up to Mitt Romney to go beyond the electability argument and to sort of close the case with respect to a lot of primary voters.
What do you think about that, to that point that he makes here on the primary voters?
As a Democrat, it all makes me feel very good to see them piling up on each other. First everybody's piling up on Mitt. Now they're all going to pile up on Newt. It's a great show from our side.
There are people who are waiting for Newt to trip up, because there are those who believe that he does not do very well if he has to be in defense mode. If anyone really goes after him about his particular financial dealings and things like that. And we saw a little bit of that over the last 24 hours. Do we have that sound between what Mitt Romney said about Newt Gingrich and during his time at Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae? Can we play it for a second? Listen to this, folks, for just a second.
I think Speaker Gingrich made some very difficult to understand comments about the Paul Ryan plan. Paul Ryan and virtually every congressman in Washington supported a plan that preserves Medicare,
right,
and cuts back government. I supported that. I said, look, we're on the same page. My plan's a little different, but we're on the same page, and I applauded his action. Speaker Gingrich said it was right-wing social engineering. I think it was a very strange position to take, and that's probably the greatest difference on policy I've seen on the stage since this campaign began.
Well, that wasn't exactly the soundbite I was looking for. I was looking for more dealing with the fact that Mitt Romney was, taking Newt to task for, making 1.6 million or so as a historian for the organization, and with Newt firing back, talking about Romney's dealings with Bain Capital. They're starting to do this. They're starting to go back and forth, and how that's going to play with voters. Do they really care? That's one question.
I think it turns most voters off. In particular that older voter who knows, we know all about Newt's bad stuff. I just care about the fact that he's closer to Ronald Reagan than Mitt Romney is, and that's where we want to go. So,
well, Joe, to your point, Mitt Romney is definitely trying to tap that famous Gingrich temperament. And, the one thing I will say in Romney's defense is he's shown more conviction going after Newt Gingrich than he's shown on all other issues combined so far this campaign cycle. That said, if he can triangulate that to other issues, he may get right back in this and give Gingrich a real head-to-head competition.
Well, he really may do that, and I know we're going to be watching how this all plays out over the next several days. Ford, thank you. I know you have to run, but it's great to see you, and thank you for weighing in with your insights today.
Thank you as always, Uma. Nice to chat, Joe.
Thank you.